What's going on, everybody? We are back. We got episode number 47 of the Club and Sub podcast. This week, we are going to talk about the alleged mega card that is UFC 261. Decent card, nothing too special, but we do have 3 title fights. So
You're muted, John.
You're muted, bro.
All right. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
As usual, we're brought to you guys by betonline.ag for a bonus, 50% bonus up to $1,000 on your first deposit. Use the promo code CLUBSUB. Again, they had all the lines up first this week. They got props for PFL this week. So, yeah, check them out, betonline.ag, promo code CLUBSUB. And then, please, guys, if you like the show, drop a like and subscribe. It would help us out a lot. We'd really appreciate it. And, yeah, so we'll get into it. As usual, you got me at MMA Fox, John Stargarian, Luke at SWR_betting, and Lags at Lags_the Capper. I'm expecting C to join us, though I'm not 100% certain. But, yeah, we'll get into it. First fight of the night. This is going to be a kind of a common theme here. It seems like they've stacked this card up with, 80% of the Chinese fighters in the UFC because Wei Li's on it. But we got Liang against Aori Carnelossi. To be honest, I don't really have very strong opinions here. I guess if you put a gun to my head, I might take a stab at Carnelossi just because I think she's the bigger hitter. I mean, she's definitely the bigger hitter. She'll probably be busier on the feet. Liang seems to be relatively wrestling-based, and yeah, I don't think she's very good at it. But again, I don't really have a strong opinion of it, and she's fought pretty good competition. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not jumping to lay minus 200 with Carnelossi, but yeah, I'm not playing Liang either. Luke, how about you?
I didn't look at this at all.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Well, except you.
Yes, I'm similar thoughts to you, John. So I wouldn't go out there and lay in the minus 210 on Carnelossi, but I think Carnelossi by KO at plus 220 is probably the spot here. I think that Liang is pretty rabid, aggro grappler that, she needs that finish round 1, round 2. If not, then speed significantly drops off. So I like Carnelossi a lot here, but wouldn't touch the money line.
Yeah, agreed. So we move on. We got another funky fight here. Jeff Molina taking on Aori. Lags, you want to start here?
Okay, I'm going to take a Luke approach here. I'm going to pass on this one.
Oh, God.
I know.
I did try and look at this a little bit. The problem, I guess, for me is there's just not really a lot of tape on Aori. And, normally in a spot like this, I don't, I'll get into this probably our next fight, but I don't particularly hold the Chinese regionals in high regard. They're more akin to the Brazilian regionals to me, whereas minimal footage, most of the guys they are facing are really part-time fighters, and they're just feeding a lot of these really low-level fighters to their prospects to make a name. So normally I'd be inclined to fight Jeff Molina or to back Jeff Molina, the guy with more footage. The problem is, Molina hasn't really fought anybody of note either, to be honest. He seems like a reasonable striker. I don't mind his striking game. I haven't really seen enough to be confident in backing him. And again, his level of comp's been low. I guess I lean Molina. It's just not, anything that I'm particularly comfortable with. Luke, how about you? You said you dipped on this too, right?
Yeah, it's kind of a theme with both of these. I don't like to pass over fights, to be honest, just because I think there's always money to be made. But if there isn't enough recent tape, especially on a fighter that I have no fucking clue who they are at all, and now I'm trying to go back and it's not the most recent footage. I can't even find their last loss. I just feel like I'm making too many assumptions and I don't really even want to waste my time. So it's not a laziness thing. It's just, even if I go back and watch, I don't think I would end up playing it anyway, because there just isn't enough meat on the bone.
No, I'm with you 100%. So we move on to a fight I do have a strong opinion about. I actually taped this about an hour before we came on the pod. We got Zhu Rong taking on Rodrigo Vargas, and I kind of put this off for most of the same reasons. And then I looked at Zhu Rong.
Yeah,
I believe I messaged Luke, Lags, and C and said, "What did I just watch?" I'm a bit. I don't know if it's just big Chinese money overseas backing this guy, but I'm a bit miffed at how this line is where it is. I just don't know what he does well, to be honest. He seems to throw, a nice two, but other than that, he's extremely low volume and not even just like, I like to refer to it kind of his actions per minute. His are very low, whether it's in the grappling or the striking. And even more concerning, something I was looking for is like, you can see guys who can make low volume games work because they kind of return fire when guys come at them. He doesn't really do that, though. His opponents are consistently getting off more strikes than he is. On top of that, he doesn't really seem to have footwork. He's very easily pressurable. And in terms of the grappling, like I've seen him go for takedowns, but that's nothing impressive. His control game really isn't anything impressive. And he has looked truly tragic on his back, to be honest. The couple times we've seen him down there. And, look, on the other side, I'm not a huge fan of Kazula, but, look, the bottom line is he was en route to beating Brock Weaver's ass in his last fight before he got DQ'd. And I'd play Brock Weaver against Zhu Rong, to be honest, like if they were at evens. I honestly, I just don't. I guess you could maybe make an argument that Zhu is a more technical striker, except I expect Vargas to take the center. I think, he's more reliable to throw combinations when he blitzes forward. And Vargas will wrestle. Like, he's not a great wrestler, but – he will go for takedowns, and he's not horrible in top position. So I don't know. He's faced better competition. I know he's 35, but Zhu's allegedly 23. I don't know what 23-year-old looks like that, but whatever. I just don't really – I guess the one thing I can say is I capped it around evens to slight favored Vargas only because – there aren't many of Zhu's recent fights available, and he did, in the one I could find, look a little bit better for the brief period that it lasted. But still, like the majority of tape here, I don't know. I don't see where he consistently wins this fight. I think the finishing upside is in Vargas's favor. I think the grappling upside's in his favor, and I think the striking is somewhat even, and Vargas is going to be busier. So yeah, I have 1.5 units at Vargas plus 211. If more of that money starts to pour in on this, I'll be hitting Vargas again here if it gets over plus 230. Luke, what's your opinion?
So definitely not a bullish opinion. I kept Wrong like a moderate favorite, and I even said it in my breakdown on Patreon that it was not a confident cap in any capacity, because you kind of touched on it. The Asian regional scene, is kind of comparable to the Brazilian regional scene. Like even like a lot of these Asian fighters, they come in, they have like a ton of pro fights, despite being young, you might, feather in the cap of that guy. But the strength of comp is so low. But from a stylistic perspective, I do think Wrong is the better striker here. I just don't particularly like the activity of Vargas, coupled with the fact that I've just never been a big Vargas supporter in the world. I don't think he's UFC caliber personally, but to your point, John, I do think he does have a path in the wrestling and grinding. We have seen guys been able to get on Wrong's hips before. If Vargas is able to make this a dirty grinding type fight and squeak something, I really wouldn't be far from surprised. So like originally it was 100% a pass for me, but more Wrong money has started to come in. So I'm actually starting to get more intrigued on the Vargas side. It really pains me to say that personally, but at the end of the day, value is value in assessing win conditions. Vargas has proven to be durable historically. So to sit there and say that, he goes and, deads Vargas, I mean, there's not a ton of evidence to suggest that that's the case, even though I do think he wins the striking exchanges moderately significantly. But Anaconda actually just posted something good. I'm going to put that up right now because I put this in my value prop article on Patreon this week. Vargas by points at plus 450. I actually like that. I think that could be one of the sneakiest props of the card personally, to just make it grindy, greasy. I don't think his submission upside is overtly high. I think that might have a lot of value.
Legs, how about you?
So I don't have a ton to add, but I do like the over 1.5. We were talking about that earlier before the pod. I'm like minus 140. I just don't think that Wrong is really anything of. I really don't think these guys are UFC caliber in general, but I wish you luck on the money line bet.
Yeah, fair. Rodrigo's gonna fuck him up, so you guys are gonna wish you were on that train, but it's fine.
As long as over 1.5.
We move on to a sneaky fight of the night contender here, potentially. We have Dana Batgerel taking on Kevin Natividad. Luke, I'll start with you here. What do you got?
Yeah, this is probably my most bullish take on the card. I really like Batgerel here, not from just an overall general perspective. I'm not saying the guy's a future top 10 guy. I'm not saying he's a world beater, but in terms of the spot, I think it's a good one for him. I think if you look at the overall just technical striking between the two, most notably just the athleticism and hand speed, I think it's very, very evident between him and Natividad, where Natividad's more of your kind of brooding, come forward guy. He doesn't throw a ton, but is going to kind of just sit down on his punches, pretty stationary, doesn't move a whole lot, is just kind of one of these guys who's going to largely rely on his toughness, where I don't think that's going to work in any capacity against Batgerel. I'm not saying that, Natividad is chinny based on the fact he just got knocked out in his last fight, hasn't before that. I get it. So I'm not, quote unquote, playing that narrative, but he was still getting hit pretty clean by a guy in Miles Johns, who's striking I don't really overtly value. I think Miles Johns is a decent wrestler. I think Miles Johns did go 0 for 7 on takedowns against him. But once again, I also think the wrestling's largely a non-factor in the fight. And I think we see a standing-based fight in that. I think Batgerel is probably 66, 70% in that scenario. I guess any sort of case that can be made for Natividad in terms of, obviously the guy has knocked a couple guys out, has some power, like I said, sits down on his punches, but despite Batgerel being somewhat hittable, the dude has proven to be an absolute zombie and takes some solid shots. I just don't really see what the overt win condition of Natividad is outside of a knockout at maybe like 20% decision, 10%, 15 around there. So I just struggled to see how he's going to be able to win minutes on a guy in Batgerel. Probably my strongest opinion of the card.
Lags, how about you?
Yeah, so I like Batgerel a lot here too. I kind of miss the original line, like the -155, -165, where it was originally hanging. But more I'm looking into is, I still think there's value, honestly, probably at -200. But I was looking at props earlier, and they have him my KO decision at -165. So not bad. And then the KO is at +280. So I like both of those. I like Batgerel.
And I want to touch on one more quick thing too, in regards to like the Haley fight for Batgerel. Obviously, he lost that one. Got taken down 3 times in the fight. All of them actually came later in the third round. He stuffed the first 2. Fine, did get controlled on the third, landed some ground and pound. What I will say is I don't know how all 3 judges scored that last round of 10-8. I think all 3 of them should be lynched in the city square, because that was absolutely terrible. But yeah, so in terms of like just in general takedown defense, I know Narkar Cop just said he's been working on his wrestling. At the end of the day, Hai Li is a Chinese wrestling champion. In the aggregate over the course of the fight, it's not like he was just smoking him there over 15 minutes. I don't think Natividad is the greatest wrestler in the world either. I think he's going to struggle to close space. Footwork is a big levels difference in the fight to me as well. So I do think the line movement is justified. I jumped in at an earlier line. I think it's a good spot. Probably wouldn't back him now. But I think if you got in around 60% or so, I think that was a good spot.
Yeah. Well, first of all, let me just take a quick bow and pat my own back for telling everybody, when everybody bet Kevin Natividad against Miles Johns, that Miles Johns was going to style on him. I don't rate Natividad striking really at all. I think he's a guy who a lot of people liked because he had a lot of like big KOs and landed a lot of big shots regionally, which I think often gets a little bit too much credit. Like, this is a different ball game up here in the UFC. And you look at a guy like Miles Johns, like, yeah, he's not a great striker, but he throws combinations and he throws straight punches, which I thought would be enough. I kind of think that here too. I haven't played it either because I missed the line like Lags did as well, which is kind of frustrating because I waited to tape it. I'm kind of hoping it comes in and I can get better than 185, to be honest. But I kind of feel the same way. Like, for me, Natividad's win condition is probably wrestling. But again, it's like, how reliable is his wrestling here? Like the guy was having, competitive grappling exchanges with Irwin Rivera. And I know like wrestling is Irwin Rivera's thing, but like he's not very good at it. So it's just like, yeah, he could, I guess, grapple Batgerel to a win, and that's probably his win condition. That or, finding, a KO, like I said, they are going to swing. But mostly, I think there's a pretty steep level difference between the striking between Batgerel and Natividad. I think he's going to touch Natividad up pretty much whenever he wants. I think KO at a plus number is a pretty decent bet, to be honest.
It was plus 280.
Yeah, I've been looking at that. I think the shots are going to be there. Natividad is wide open down the middle. He's one of these guys who relies on big hooks, doesn't really have conventional boxing. And the bottom line is, while they're at range, it's one of these fights where it's like, it's not just that Natividad, I think, has defensive flaws. It's that he's going to come forward and look to swing. And we know that Bakary is going to swing as well and hits hard. And so, yeah, I mean, I think Bakary is the side, and I think he's got a pretty good chance to KO Natividad here. So, yeah, we will move on. We have Tristan Connolly taking on Pat Sabatini. Lags, you want to break this down?
Yeah, so I did move in on a player earlier today. So I like Pat here, but I'm not really touching him from a money line perspective. I actually like the under 2.5. So I played that for 1 unit at plus 175. I think his grappling is pretty solid, wrestling solid enough here, I think, to get control time over Connolly, and I think he has a chance to get a submission here. And then in the off chance that obviously he doesn't, I think Tristan's game enough of an opponent to, potentially find that upset. I mean, these guys combined for a 75% finishing rate, so I think that at plus 175, I like the shot. Yeah,
I don't mind that. I guess for me, I have no play here. I struggle to find a strong opinion because I think they're both decent grapplers, at least from a technical standpoint. I think, if you got a hold of the opener around evens on Sabatini, I like it. I think the problem for me with playing Sabatini, I think Sabatini is going to win this fight, to be clear. I think the problem for me with playing him over, say, a minus 150 or minus 185 is really I think his margins on rounds are pretty thin because while I do think he's better everywhere, I don't think it's like a chasm between him and Connolly anywhere. I don't think Sabatini's a great striker. He's okay. I don't think he's a great wrestler. He's solid. He's an excellent jiu-jitsu player. But, Connolly's pretty good jiu-jitsu himself. And so ultimately, I favor Sabatini everywhere. But it's one of those fights where it's I don't think it would be hard to see the right kind of round sequencing happen where Connolly could steal a close decision. And so, yeah, I think Sabatini's aside. I think the most likely scenario is this kind of plays out, with a lot of grappling exchanges with Sabatini controlling dominant positions throughout the fight. But that said, we often do see these jiu-jitsu guys, end up in striking matches. And if that happens, I still favor Sabatini, but I think there's not going to be a lot of power coming back either way. And in a low volume striking match, I favor Sabatini, but that's a close fight. So we'll see. Luke, how about you?
Yeah, I jumped in for quite a few shares on Sabatini at that Bet Online Open at Pick'em. I thought that was egregious. Obviously not tip to track or anything, but yeah, I thought that was stupid. But yeah, at minus 200, I guess, yeah, the conversation, I wouldn't say changes. Am I happy to lay, minus 200 on Sabatini? Probably not. I'd like a better price personally. Well, the big thing is there just really isn't a ton of footage on Connolly in general. Obviously, he's a BJJ black belt, but from the limited amount of what I've seen, well, one, Connolly hasn't faced a ton of resistance in the grappling at all. So there are some questions in regards to just, what he looks like when he's, faced with some pressure, because I do value the grappling of Sabatini. Daniel Gracie, black belt. We've seen him go to it historically. I don't think, to your point, John, that he's the world beater in wrestling at all. But I do think the line is justified. Would I lay 70% on it? Probably not. We get to minus 186, might be a different conversation to me. Wouldn't be a big play, but I do think Sabatini is the superior grappler. I think Connolly, tough guy, regional guy, got to give him credit for scoring the big upset against Pereira. But at the end of the day, Pereira gassed in 2 fucking minutes. And at the end of the day, people will look at, oh, the distance striking was competitive, when he's fighting up to weight class. But once again, the guy gassed in 2 minutes. And if you actually really look at it too, with all the time that Connolly had on top in that fight, he didn't actually secure one official takedown. It was Pereira doing jumping shit and he fell to his back or he tripped or something and Connolly just fell on top. Like, he didn't actually take Pereira down at all in that fight.
If we're being honest about that fight, you could have made an argument for Pereira winning it despite being death gassed for 12 minutes of the fight.
Yeah, like I'm not trying to bury the guy or anything, but honestly, I think it's just a circumstance of the fact that, he went in there, scored that big upset. They're giving the guy a nod or whatever. Props to him. Not, like I said, not trying to bury the guy, but I don't think he's a UFC caliber fighter personally. I do think Pat Sabatini is. I do think he has the skill set to win this fight more often than not. So once again, not saying, chuck your 3, 4, 5 units on him, but I do think it is a winnable fight for Mr. Sabatini.
Yeah, we move on to maybe John's first campfire of the night. We got Brendan Allen taking on Carl Roberson. So, let me say,
it's just the Brandon Allen campfire. You just keep roasting it. You just keep roasting it year after year.
We're just gonna keep throwing gasoline on the fire every time Brendan Allen fights. But I see a lot of takes that if it's there, everybody's like, oh, Brendan Allen, hasn't grappled much. If he decides to grapple, this fight should be easy for him. And it's really? Because Carl Roberson, first of all, let me start. So I promise you I'll bring it back to this fight. But let's go back to Brendan Allen's UFC debut. Fights Kevin Holland. Now, what just happened to Kevin Holland in his last 2 fights against Derek Brunson and Marvin Vettori? He got ragdolled for 10 rounds without much issue. Brendan Allen fights him and proceeds to get his ass kicked in the grappling by Kevin Holland for the first 5 minutes of that fight until Holland completely gasses out and subs him in round 2. We go back even a fight or 2 before that. He takes on Fluffy Hernandez on the regional scene. Now, I'm a Fluffy guy, but let's be honest. Fluffy is not exactly good at avoiding dominant positions in the grappling, right? No. And yet Fluffy ragdolls Brendan Allen over 5 rounds in that fight. And so then we get Tom Breeze, who basically quits. And then, he didn't attempt to take down the last 2 fights. But nonetheless, Brendan Allen's a black belt. He's got a bunch of submissions. He finds dominant positions. Carl Roberson's been subbed a bunch of times. This is easy work for Brendan Allen. Now, who has actually outgrappled Carl Roberson? Glover Teixeira, Cesar Mutante Ferreira, and Marvin Vettori. All of those guys would absolutely put Brendan Allen in a pretzel and lock him in a trash can. This is not the level of difference in the grappling between Brendan Allen and those 3 is massive. And, outside of that fight, Roberson's looked like a reasonable grappler. Yes, he makes some mistakes. He has horrible fight IQ. No question about that. There is absolutely zero question. But the idea that Brendan Allen is just going to come out here and dominate Carl Roberson if he decides he wants to wrestle, give me a break. There's no real evidence that that's the case. On top of that, it's you look at the guys, Roberson's first level takedown defense is pretty good. He stuffed a couple takedowns against, Teixeira. He stuffed a takedown against Vettori. The guys who give him issues are the guys who kind of stay on it and chain their takedowns together. Allen doesn't do that. He telegraphs his shots and he tends to shoot one at a time. And on top of that, he never really attempts takedowns in volume ever throughout his career. So, and even less so since he got to the UFC. And so it's I don't think you can reasonably put cap Allen's takedown attempts here higher than 2 to 3 at the absolute most, just given what we know. Maybe he'll attempt more, but even if he does, I don't think it's a lock he secures 1. And if he does, look, I've never seen someone get swept out of mount as many times as I've seen Brendan Allen in my life. Literally, it might be maybe in all the tape that I've watched of the UFC combined, I haven't seen those people get swept out of mount as many times as I've seen Brendan Allen get swept out of mount. He's just not positionally sound at all. And so it's I don't think there is this, there's much evidence that if he chooses to grapple, he's going to out-grapple Carl Roberson. Maybe he will, but I don't think it's, I don't think it's a given. And on the feet, this is going to be one fucking way traffic, okay? Brendan Allen, first of all, he can't set up those takedowns. And at what Strickland did to him, look, I would pick Strickland against Roberson just because he's busier, but Roberson is dangerous on the feet. His metrics support it. The tape support it. He does vicious attritional work. He is going to touch Allen up as much as he wants in this fight. And so ultimately it's the line's going up, and I missed the line. I have 2 units on Roberson plus 116, and I'm kind of miffed here. I think people are just doing a little too much. Oh, 1+1, he grapples, Roberson gets subbed, Allen must be the side, and just not actually thinking about this logically. So, yeah, I'm pretty bullish on Roberson on his spot. I think he's going to dumpster Allen, to be honest. Luke, how about you?
Yeah, I'm picking Allen here. No, like I definitely understand all of your points. I can't disagree with a lot of them. Obviously the guys that Roberson has gotten subbed by, I can't disagree. Would also probably tie Brendan Allen a pretzel. I've never been a big Brendan Allen guy. I was very big on Sean Strickland against him in the fight as well. But at the end of the day, to me, it comes down to more so of those fight IQ and positional mistakes for Carl Roberson. It does irk me when it comes to Allen that he's not a position over submission guy. If you've been listening to this podcast for a while, like I want my position, type of guys, and then, work your attritional type chokes and whatnot from there. But he's kind of more of your, GM3 to some regard, just throw shit out the window. He's content to play from his back, do that type of thing. Not a direct comparison, but you guys get what I'm saying. So I get that from some perspective, especially if you're looking at his fight with, what was the Roberson's fight with the Brazilian guy? What was his name again? Sorry. Turman. Turman, where, Turman did have some success, and then Roberson was able to spin into his guard. I see that also being a potentially live outcome here. So I'm kind of with you, John, in the sense that, if Allen gets the fight down, it's not like a lock that he out grapples him. But at the end of the day, I still can't unsee all of the small little positional mistakes I've seen from Roberson. And I do think a submission is very live from Brendan Allen. So I don't want to sound like the Mark or whatever who looked at the, MMA by the numbers tweet, whatever, earlier this week, where it's like, oh, he attempts 3+ takedowns. This is what happens. He doesn't attempt 3+ takedowns. This is what happens. But I do think it's like somewhat telling to some perspective. I'm just not a big fan of either guy's fight IQ personally. Roberson obviously smokes him on the feet. I don't concede that at all. But yeah, this fight's largely a massive pass for me. But if it keeps moving, what I will say, I'd be fine with betting Roberson if it keeps moving.
Lags, how about you?
Yeah, kind of with Luke here as well. I'm just passing on Roberson due to the fight IQ nature. That's honestly it. I agree with you, John. Listen, I think he covers him on the feet. I think he has a chance to out-grapple him, but it's just that IQ that's just making me pass here.
Gives his back too easily. I just can't back a guy who gives his back like consistently against black belts. You can say what you want about, Brendan Allen's grappling. Is he a real black belt? I don't know. I can't do it.
Yeah, fair. We move on. We have the fight no one asked for. We got Dwight Grant taking on Stefan Sekulic. Luke, you got any opinion here?
Yeah, not a strong one. What I will say off the top, if you're laying over -200 on Dwight Grant at this point, you are an absolute moron. And you're just asking to lose money long term, because the guy's not high output. I think he's an okay athlete. Obviously, decent takedown defense, has some power, but just really not. He's not a guy who's went out there and put over, a complete 15-minute performance in the UFC. I think it was, he's went to 2 splits. He went to the split with Joban and Otto. In my opinion, some people might disagree with this. I thought both of those should actually have been flipped. I thought he beat Otto, and then I thought he lost to Joban. But really the common theme is that, if he's not going out there sparking guys historically, he's being in close fights. You go to the Daniel Rodriguez fight. I had a big bet on Daniel Rodriguez there, not going to lie, but in full transparency, I would say maybe 60 to 70% of the times, that same sequence happens. A ref probably stops in. I'm not saying I agree with it, because, D-Rod was actually moving when the ref told him to move, got up, and then killed him. So it is what it is. At the end of the day, not a big Dwight Grant fan. Sekulic, 2.5-year layoff, coming off a steroid suspension. Not overtly convinced he's UFC caliber, but at the end of the day, the guy does do shit, as we like to call. He will throw strikes. He will attempt takedowns. So if you told me that if Grant doesn't kill him at some point, that this fight plays out closer than odds indicate. Really wouldn't be surprised, but it's, once again, some of the intangibles here. I don't think the guy's very fast. He's pretty hittable. In general, I would say Sekulic is just kind of sloppy is the best way I could describe it. So it's kind of hard to back that guy, coupled with the last steroid suspension. But yeah, I think this is probably one of the better fights from a money line perspective to stay away from on the card.
Lags, how about you?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think this is pretty much a dog or pass. I don't know how you can really be playing Dwight Grant at minus 220. It pretty much low volume, KO or busts. And if not, that this is going to be a pretty close fight. And you're just going to be sweating your ticket. So easy pass.
Yeah, agreed. Luke hit most of it on the head. I guess my view is, if you want to tell me you're taking a stab on Sekulic because he could win just via being enthusiastic, I guess I get it, because it is true. But also, as someone who is holding an Alan Jouban ticket, who lost against Dwight Grant, I just hate having money on Dwight Grant fights, to be honest. I believe I had an untracked play on D-Rod against him as well, where I almost had a heart attack about 30 seconds into that fight. I mean, look, it's weird because it's like it is a step down for Grant, and yet also, as eager as I am to play those spots, it's like it's Dwight Grant. Like, the guy is he's long, tall, and goofy, and he hits very hard. Like that seems to be what he has. He stops takedowns and he hits very hard. He's like Kmart Tyron Woodley, really.
Except he has shit defense though too.
Yeah. And so it's like I have a feeling he's going to knock Sekulic out, but also. Yeah. I don't really have much interest in having my money involved in Grant here. You know, it's just he's too like his NK. I think his inside the distance line is like even money too. So it's like
right.
that's not really enough for me to take the stab. If it was like plus 200, that would be interesting. But yeah, I think Grant KOs him. But if Sekulic wins a really ugly fight where he lands 40 strikes and a takedown, it wouldn't shock me. So. Yeah, we move on to greener pastures. We have another absolute mess of a fight. We got Randy Brown taking on Alex Cowboy Oliveira. Alex, take it away. Anything here?
Yeah, so I think you opened it pretty good. I mean, this is pretty much another pass fight, I think. But I'm going to be honest, I'll be a little contrarian. I actually kind of like Cowboy here. I think that he's just got that weird, unique striking style, and I think that he could mix in the grappling here against Randy. But I think ultimately it's a close, weird decision type of fight. But I was looking at props earlier. Oliveira by decision plus 320. Not horrible.
Yeah. This fight's weird. And it's weird because like I like Randy Brown as a fighter theoretically. But when it actually comes like in actually putting his game into practice, I can't stand it. Like I bet him against Luke, and that looked so bad in hindsight. And there were some red flags that I probably shouldn't have gotten involved there beforehand. It's just like his frame is huge. He has all the tools that Luke likes, and it sucks me in here too. You know, big frame. He's kind of got a low-key crafty submission game. You know, he seemed to be putting together the volume part of his game when he fought Barberina, and I was like, wow, maybe Randy Brown took the next step. You know, great athleticism, and like, but he just can't seem to put it all together on a fight-to-fight basis. And like, I do sort of think. Like, Oliveira's looked really bad lately. And, like, the Rakhmonov fight was really the last straw for me with him. But, like, man.
Yeah, I'll say, yeah, that's kind of the issue with me. Sorry, real quick. That's kind of the issue with me with Oliveira, like, not backing him here as a short dog just because it's kind of 50-50 which Oliveira you're going to get. Walmart Oliveira or you got fucking, you know, elite level Oliveira.
And even if you get great Oliveira, he could just stick his head into a guillotine or a triangle at some point. You know, you never know. I sort of view it as I think Brown has the tools to make this look easy. You know, if he fights intelligently, especially with Cowboy's recent form. But at the same time, it's like Cowboy's so unpredictable. Like he looked like he was done, and then he fought Peter Sabata, and I fortunately passed on that. And he came out and looked like Cowboy from 5 years ago. That came out of nowhere, and he's looked horrible again since. And so it's just like, I don't know. I think this fight's a mess. I think it's going to be really fun to watch. But yeah, I think Brown should take care of business, but I have no interest in playing the juice on him. Luke, how about you?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think it's a great spot to pass on. I just think there are so many disconcerting things. Well, I should say there's a lot of positive things about both guys, but there's also a lot of very disconcerting things about both guys in terms that you touched on with Brown. I think that's probably the best way to classify him is he's another one of these guys that falls into the, you know, quote unquote Luis Pena category for me. got lucky on a bet there last week on Mr. Pena. But a guy I think who has all the tools and intangibles to be a solid. That's not to say he's not a decent UFC fighter, but better than what he's shown, I should say. But he just really hasn't been able to piece it together. Oliveira, gigantic question mark, 13 moms, 30 kids, Brazil, grenades in gas stations, former bull rider. You don't know what you're getting, which is why his fights are always fun. Yeah, I mean, you're getting some fun with Cowboy Oliveira fights, but from a stylistic perspective,
dancing on the way to the ring.
What's that?
Dancing on the way to the octagon.
Dude, I'm telling you guys right now,
that's the fight of legends.
If you have never seen that clip of Oliveira coming out, Mike Perry's already in the ring. He's doing
dancing.
And Perry's doing like the chicken thing in the dude. It's legitimately the greatest scene in the history of modern MMA in the last 10 years. It legitimately is. It's phenomenal.
Yeah,
it's absolutely phenomenal. You guys got to check that out. But in terms of my take on the fight, I don't want to bet on it. I think Brown does a little bit more. To Lags' point, would I be surprised if Oliveira has wrestling success? No, I wouldn't. His wrestling metrics are good. Brown has gotten stuck on bottom before. He does have long legs, though. Triangles, arm bars, wouldn't be surprised. But ultimately, why I think Brown edges it is that traditionally Oliveira is going to struggle in a lot more wrestling, grinding type-based fights, which is not something, traditionally we're getting here, but I do still think Randy Brown plays the outside, does more. Not a confident take. I like Randy Brown to edge a decision.
Yeah, agreed. I don't mind that. And we move on. We have this is a weird one. This has the potential to be a really fun fight or be, pretty unwatchable. We got Jim Crute taking on Anthony Smith. And to be honest, I've always been, one of the most anti-Anthony Smith guys out there. I really, really, really tried to find an angle.
Don't do it, John.
He checks a lot of boxes I look for. Crute, I think he's the better striker here. And Crute on the other side, I'm not going to say Crute's fraudulent. I just I still don't know what he is, because outside of his fight with Paul Craig, which was mostly a 15-minute grappling match, it's really been a lot of quick finishes, whether he's won or lost in the UFC. And so it's I bet Olasegic against him, and then Crute came out and decided to proactively grapple and destroyed him. And I was like, holy shit, Crute's turned a corner. And then I obviously didn't play him at minus 300 against Bukowskis, but I'm like, oh, Crute's going to come out, grapple him to death, and this is going to be over fairly soon. And Crute instead decides to come out and swing bombs with him. Now, he looked great and he won, but also dude, what the fuck are you doing here? And so in my head, I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, Smith could come out here and knock Crute out. That could definitely happen. That is within the range of possible outcomes. But at the same time, it's despite the experience edge, despite the level of competition edge, Smith's defensive grappling is so fucking horrific. It's if you gave me plus 300, I could do it and take the stab. But at plus 165, it's if Crute just uses his brain and takes him down, he's going to hold him on the mat. I don't think Smith, how Devin Clark managed to get himself triangled by Anthony Smith, I'm still kind of at a loss for. Anthony Smith just has magic powers that gets people to do dumb things when they're on top.
No, because Devin Clark has awful IQ.
Yeah, that is true too. But it's just I think Crute has a legit minus 400 path to victory if he takes it. And with that on the table, especially since 2 fights ago he did take it, I can't really get involved. One thing I'm kind of curious about is what Crute's gas tank is like. He did look a little tired at the end of the Craig fight, but it was 3 rounds of grappling. So it's maybe if it looks like he's starting to fall apart, in the middle of round 2, you take a live shot at Smith. But yeah, I think Crute's going to take care of him. How about you, Luke?
Yeah, I think that's you just kind of touched on it at the end. I think that's an interesting consideration, and not even necessarily the Paul Craig fight. Obviously, a valid point, but even going back to his Contender Series fight that got a little bit more extended. Granted, was a second ago. Developing, say what you want. He was sucking wind a little bit in that fight too when it was extended. So that's kind of my big thing here, where we can, talk all the shit we want about Anthony Smith. He's a slow starter, all that. I get it. But battle-tested vet that has pulled shit out of his ass more times than we can count. I've been wrong on Anthony Smith fights all the time. In my opinion, Anthony Smith actually is the better technical striker here of the two. But to your point, John, I do think he has a clear path to victory on the ground if he is defensively responsible and not being too over aggressive in, trying to pass or attack stuff, just more methodically working over Smith. I think that's really the way he gets to him. But to your point, once again, I think Crute's gas tank in an extended fight is a gigantic question mark. So homeboy's got a minus 200 next to his name. I talk about it all the time. When you're laying, chalky money lines, what's your confidence interval that this guy can go out there and win a decision? It's a little questionable. I know, Legs, you'll get to it in terms of your prop, and I actually agree with you. I won't steal your thunder there in terms of value, okay. But I like Crute. Theoretically, it's a fight he should win if Anthony Smith does stuff in Sparks Crute. I wouldn't be surprised, because one thing I will definitively say, Jimmy Crute's striking defense at space is still completely garbage. That is one thing I will definitively say. Anthony Smith hits hard when he decides to let his hands go. You just don't know, because he's largely allergic to pressure, backs up in straight lines. Not an overgrade sign, but it's a pass for me.
Legs, Hugh. And sorry I didn't start with you. I completely forgot you had this prop.
No, it's totally fine. But you guys touched a lot of the main points. John, you touched the wrestling for Crute, pretty obvious, minus 400 path to victory. Luke, you touched the cardio issues, why you shouldn't really touch the minus 200 money line. And I agree. So that's kind of why I'm touching a little prop here. I got half unit on Crute by decision at plus 390. I think that if he uses that obvious wrestling path, I think Smith is still durable and tough enough, obviously. Hard, Anthony Smith. I think we can get a decision victory here. I think Crute is the real deal, but obviously cardio question marks are why I'm not touching the money line.
Yeah, fair. And we move on. We have a fight that we all have action on. We got the All-American, Chris Weidman, Long Island's own, Northeast, baby, coming back and taking on Uriah Hall, the quote-unquote rejuvenated Uriah Hall at middleweight here. Luke, you want to take this away?
Yeah, originally, well, I shouldn't say originally. I didn't think I was going to have originally, I was just kind of like, meh when I originally, saw it booked. And then, I dug into it, and I think it's a play. I think a lot of people, I shouldn't say have like differing opinions on it. I think it's more so a lot of people will look at it as a pass fight, but really after digging into it, I think out of principle, I'm not saying you got to lay your 3, 4, 5 units here, but I think you have to be playing Chris Weidman, in my opinion. If you really dig into the numbers in how both guys have done historically, you have to be playing Weidman. The common narrative, Weidman, chinny, knocked out in his last 5 losses. Hall, explosive guy, shit chin, gonna knock out Chris Weidman. How could I possibly trust, my hard-earned money with Chris Weidman? But it's like, the one thing I will say to counter that is I do think, despite a lot of the top guys, even some of the good guys that Hall has faced, I do think Chris Weidman is actually the best pure wrestler that he's also fought. People talk about, the solid takedown defense of Uriah Hall, and I can't concede any of those points either. His first level takedown defense is pretty good, but there have been multiple fights where he's gotten stuck on his back and had his back taken too before. Mousasi had extended grappling success in the first rounds of both of those fights. Whitaker took him down, took his back. Antonio Carlos Jr. obviously had some success there. And really the common problem I've had with Uriah Hall is the guy has legitimately not had one complete performance in the UFC. I would love someone to comment right now comment the fight where Uriah Hall has put on a complete 15-minute performance, because I have not seen it. That doesn't take away from his explosiveness. That doesn't take away from his boxing, his power, his kicking ability, his athleticism. It doesn't take away from any of that. The guy can put anybody out at any point, but he's a terrible minute winner. Our boy C and all of us have touched on that in our group chat too. Homeboy was having, competitive minutes with Anderson's 45-year-old Anderson Silva just a little bit ago. Really wasn't that long ago. Was his last fight, actually. So it's like, if you're trying to tell me, like, if you're not going to play Chris Weidman around evens, then where do you cap the fight? Because I need someone to tell me where they assess that KO line of Uriah Hall to not make you play Weidman. Because for you to not play Weidman, in my opinion, you would have to be putting the Hall KO line 40%. And I say that's nonsense, in my opinion, because assuming Chris Weidman's proactively wrestling, which he always does, the stats support it. There's no reason to suggest he won't. I think he does get takedowns. That also limits the KO potential of Uriah Hall. It's Weidman's fight to lose. If you want to hedge out on some, Hall KO, I wouldn't hate it. But honestly, I even still think that price sucks. It's like plus 215. Based on where I put his KO chances, I think it's a negative EV play, even taking that poke on Hall KO. So I think the play is on Weidman money line. I get it. Once again, if you don't want to go heavy on it, might get sparked, so be it. But if you really look and analyze the fight and tell me how Uriah Hall wins minutes here, assuming the KO doesn't come, tell me, and then tell me what line you assign the KO to, because based on the current line, makes no sense to me.
Legs, how about you?
Yes, I say similar to last week with GM3 and Bartosz Swabiński. This is pretty much, does Hall find the KO or does he not find the KO? I think it's pretty simple. Obviously we're all on the side that he doesn't find the KO just because of the low volume nature of Uriah Hall and just the fact that obviously Chris proactively wrestles. I think Chris has some of the best top time and the top pressure that Uriah's probably going to ever see. And I think that Chris is going to potentially get a finish or a dominant decision here. So, yeah, I agree with all of your points here, Luke. And, yeah, I don't know. The KO line's pretty short if you were going to answer that. I think Weidman is the obvious play here.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about the rejuvenated Uriah Hall for a second.
Campfire.
Three fight winning streak. Everybody say he's really found a home at Fortis MMA. It's a different Uriah Hall. Well, let's go back to the start of this winning streak. We got Bevon Lewis, who was dumpstering Uriah Hall for 12 minutes of that fight, literally doing whatever he wanted to him. Bevon Lewis, guys, in case you don't remember, not in the UFC anymore. He found a KO late in round 3. His next fight, Antonio Carlos Jr. Again, Hall lost 13 minutes of that fight. He won the fight purely on damage optics because Carlos standing doesn't really have an effective way to, close distance without taking damage. But he got controlled for 11 minutes on the mat that fight. And to be honest, I think most people thought he lost that fight. His next fight, which is last one, he fought Anderson Silva, 45-year-old man who the UFC after the fight were like, yeah, you're not fighting here anymore. We cannot keep putting you in these fights. He lost the first 13 minutes of that fight. And so it's like, did he really get rejuvenated? Or has he kind of used one via his best skill? It's a little reminiscent of Woodley's run, to be honest, except, Woodley actually had a decent counter right, whereas I don't really consider Hall. I mean, if you guys disagree, tell me, but a counter puncher.
No.
And like when I think about this fight, it's like, look, if Hall was the kind of guy, like you look at, even though Kelvin lost the fight, when Kelvin knocked down Weidman, he managed to draw out a reckless shot when he dropped him because he kept pressuring forward and staying on the front foot. If Hall was going to come out, poke Weidman with the jab and try to force him to close distance aggressively, I'd be a bit more worried about the KO. But that's not really Hall's game. He's going to sit back and look to work the jab. And something kind of note that I haven't really seen mentioned is like Hall's got a really massive reach for the division. It's about 79 inches, I think. And so a lot of guys can struggle to get inside on him, and he has an easy time kind of pumping the jab in their face and keeping them from closing distance. Weidman's actually taller than him, and it only has a 1-inch reach disadvantage here. He's not going to be able to just keep Weidman outside of range. And if you let Weidman Weidman's not a horrible striker. He can be hittable, but he's really, the guy was outboxing Jacare with ease a couple fights ago, if you recall. The guy can strike, and if you let Weidman just kind of go forward and pick his spots to take shots, he's going to be able to do that all day. And so that's kind of my thing. Like if Hall was the kind of super aggressive guy who was going to come out and look to put it on Weidman right away, I'd be a bit more worried about the KO. But instead, what you're going to have is Weidman kind of just trying to pick spots to find the takedown. And, could Hall counter him and finish him there? Yeah, he could. But you don't really see Weidman. Ray has countered him hard, but you don't really see him get countered that much coming in because he's pretty good at setting up those shots. And, you guys touched on it, but he's going to find the takedowns once he gets inside. And look, I wouldn't say in a jiu-jitsu competition he'd beat Antonio Carlos Jr., but in terms of MMA top game, he is way more dangerous than Carlos. It's not just the submission threat, which he has, but he has absolutely vicious ground and pound on top. And so, look, believe it or not, and this is not even relevant, these guys fought back in the day. Weidman finished Hall and gave him his first career loss. But I kind of think that's going to happen again here. I actually think the Weidman plus 320 ITD is pretty nice because I do think every time he gets him down pretty much, he is going to find the dominant position. And whether that's via a submission or ground and pound, I think the opportunities to finish are going to be there all fight long. And then the last thing I'll touch on is I've seen a few people now talk about like Hall round 3 and, if Weidman gasses out. The thing is, Weidman's not a gasser. Like, I know he gassed in his last fight, but that was in a fight that was literally two guys trying to wrestle each other for 10 minutes when they gassed out. Weidman's not going to get that same level of resistance from Uriah Hall that he got from Omari Akhmedov, who is an absolute dog and is a pretty good grappler himself. It's like, and he's built like a fire hydrant. Yeah.
You're going to get more resistance from Omari, the super jacked Russian wrestler, than Uriah Hall, low volume, just going to fucking sit there.
Yeah, so like I pretty much think, look, like what Lou, you guys said, I think Hall can KO him, obviously. Look, I'm not going to take that away from Hall. Hall is a huge hitter. He KO'd Misasi at one point. He's KO'd Jocko, but I don't really – he's going to give Weidman the kind of fight Weidman wants, and I can't assign a KO better than like 25%, to be honest. And like maybe you give Hall – 10% chance to win a decision just on like damage optics, same kind of deal. But even then, I think Chris should be, a pretty significant favorite here. And I've always been fairly anti-Weidman, but, especially during this run, but I think this is a tailor-made matchup for him, to be honest. So yeah, I have 2.5 units on him, minus 105. I think the number right now is still pretty good, to be honest, at minus 130.
I have 1.5. Oh yeah, I guess I have 1.5 units at minus 110.
Yeah. And like I said, I think the ITD is pretty good as well. So we move on. We have the first of 3 title fights on the card. This is a fun one. We got Bate Estaca, Jessica Andrade, taking on Valentina Shevchenko, trying to beat the flyweight queen. Lags, what do you have?
So we're going to keep the fire kindled. And, I actually am going to play Jessica Andrade here. I haven't exactly made a play on her yet, but I think more so just from a value perspective, as we were talking earlier, I think that this is just going to be a totally different dynamic of a fight that I think that it's just going to throw Valentina off. Just as simple as that. I think that Valentina, mostly in these last few fights, she's been able to control the pace. It's mostly a low volume striking fight where she's controlling the pace. And that's, that's okay for her. That's where she excels. She's an excellent counter striker, but obviously Andrade is going to bring that power, going to bring that grappling upside that I think she can use here effectively. And I think she's live for a finish. I think she could be live to win 3 rounds here, win decision. I like her, honestly. And I think that don't get me wrong. I'm not saying, this is a lot by any means. I think Shevchenko obviously should be the favorite, minus 230-ish, like 65, 70%. But I think minus 450 is kind of insane, to be honest with you. So I'm probably going to be on Andrade for 1 unit.
Yeah, this line's crazy, to be honest. That's my opinion personally. Look, there's a lot of reasons I like Andrade in the spot. Now, look, if they get into a technical kickboxing match, yeah, I expect Valentina will have her way. But, like, that's not really Andrade's game. And, where we have seen throughout her entire career Valentina have issues is with girls that will press clinch her or take her down. She's gotten stuck on her back a few times throughout her career. She has gotten pushed to the fence and held in the clinch. We saw Maya do it last fight. And unlike Jennifer Maya, Andrade is going to throw strikes in the clinch, and she's going to work hard in there. And she's going to throw hard coming off the break, too, which Maya didn't. Maya was basically eating elbows off the break consistently. And so, like, I think about the fight, and it's like, yeah, in space, I obviously favor Valentina. The thing is, how long can she keep it there? We saw Pena. Now, granted, the fight was a few years ago, but how much better has Valentina gotten? I don't know. She's 33 now. We saw Pena be able to close distance fairly easily. You have to dodge a couple shots getting in, but if you can push Valentina to the fence. We saw the same thing happen with Maya last fight, and it's like, look, I know it's easy to look at the Rose fight and the Joanna fight and be like, oh, she's just going to jab and move Andrade for 5 rounds like they did. But it's like that. I don't think she has that game. She doesn't have kind of the technical boxing game of either Rose or Joanna. You look at Valentina's strike Joanna and Rose are both incredibly light on their feet. Rose in particular at moving. Valentina tends to sit down in the pocket on her shots pretty hard. The result of which she hits harder, but also if she doesn't time her shots right, she can get caught and pushed back. And I kind of think that's going to happen a lot in this fight. And so it's like, if I think Jennifer Meyer got 8 minutes of control time, if I think that Andrade could get 10 to 12 minutes of control time here, how is this minus 400? Not to mention, she hits like a truck. She's the hardest hitting girl Valentina's faced since Nunes. And if we're being honest about the Nunes fights, Valentina, those were basically staring contests. Both of them were kind of playing a chess match in that fight, whereas Andrade is a bulldozer. She's not going to play a chess match.
Yeah.
I mean, if she does, she's fucked. Like that's the truth. Right? So it's like, if she does decide to have that chess match, she basically has no chance to win. But she's going to have a chance to land big shots here. My bigger concern is I wish Andrade's wrestling was a bit more technical, because I actually do think she's going to get takedowns. The thing is, Andrade's slams tend to leave her inside control, where I think Valentina can easily get out. Whereas if she was landing takedowns, I think she can. I'm pretty sure she can hold Valentina down in her guard, just because I don't think Valentina's ability to work up from guard is that good. But yeah, look, I favor Valentina here, like minus 200, minus 230 range. But I got plus 350 on Andrade. I have a unit on it. I don't.
Nice.
Like I said, I don't think this line makes terribly much sense. This is, and just one last thing to add, Luke, sorry. But if you actually look at the girls that, Valentina's fought at 25, look, I get she's been a dominant force here. But do you think Andrade would not butcher every single one of them as well? So this is it's not a big step up in terms of her career, but in terms of the girl she's been fighting lately, it is. It's a very different fight. Luke, what do you think here?
So I guess I'll say off the top, I don't hate the stabs on Andrade, because even though I think Valentina kicks her in the face and knocks her out, to be completely honest, I don't hate the stabs on Andrade. And it's weird because we've talked about it in the group chat before. I don't think the girl, at 125 that is out there to beat her is going to be a girl who's going to, go out there and, out technique her, out finesse a girl like Shevchenko. I don't think there's a girl out there in the world right now that's going to be able to do that. I'm not going to lie. I'm going to sound like an idiot in saying this, but I actually gave a bit more credence to Chookagian against Shevchenko. I thought, it might be a little pitter patter range striking match. Chuk might be able to, force close rounds, edge something there, might be a potentially wide. And then, Shevchenko goes, Nikish, and dumps her and then beats the shit out of her. So that didn't go particularly well. But so ultimately what I'm getting to, and why I don't hate the play on Andrade, like I said, I don't think you're going to go out there and out technique Valentina Shevchenko. You have to go in there and make it a dirty, gritty, greasy type of fight. And I think that is the type of girl that's to beat Valentina. Andrade is that archetype, but at the same time, I still don't think that win percentage is overtly high percentage at the same time to do so. It's more of like a show me type of thing at plus 300. Once again, if that's kind of, the number you want to sit there and, let the flyer go, one of those kind of typical show me spots. I don't hate it, but honestly, if anything, I was to play this fight, I'd more so be looking to the under 4.5, or the fight doesn't go to decision. I think based on that style that Andrade brings, my take is if she is able to have that kind of success that she needs to win a 25-minute fight, I think her KO chances go up exponentially, because that means she's getting inside and utilizing that physicality advantage. If she's not, well, we've seen that same song and dance before. She's going to go get picked apart from the outside. Andrade has essentially no defense. I think she probably gets lit up and probably finished in that scenario too. I haven't played it yet. I'd personally like a little bit better of a number, but instead of taking the flyer on Andrade, once again, I don't hate it, guys. Hashtag, as they say in Brazil, respect. But I'm looking more to violence if I was to play this spot.
Yeah, fair. I mean, it should be a fun fight. I kind of agree with you on playing the under too, because I do sort of think Lags, and you and I talked about this morning.
Because we were talking about that too. Because I was talking about playing. Go ahead.
It's like if I could see Andrade getting head kicked and finished pretty quickly, but I do sort of think if it turns out she's keeping her eye on the ball here and avoids it, it's going to end up being a pretty gritty fight. Also, Lags, is the line still there? Because I'm going to tell everybody else about it if it is.
Oh boy,
you know the line we're talking about.
No, it's not there anymore.
Okay.
No, I messaged the group chat about it, but the bets were not voided.
There you go. There was a FanDuel line earlier that was Andrade KO plus 5,000. And the bizarre thing about it is they were at plus 500 earlier in the day, and then randomly for about an hour, it changed to plus 5,000. I don't know why. I took a small poke at it. Obviously not tipping it or anything like that, but
I got 20 to win $1,000.
Yeah.
So essentially, John and Lags Club and Sub Pod Yachts. He's going to hit his fucking monster parlay this week. And, Lags is going to be cutting a Colby Covington MyBookie promo from a hot tub with 3, Colombians right behind him. It's going to be phenomenal, guys.
I actually think
right after Jimmy Crute wins a decision, too.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure C parlayed that line.
Did he really?
A lot. He said he was able to get a lot more money down by parlaying it. So I think C ended up getting that pretty good. But we'll see what happens. Hopefully it comes through. We move on. We got the defending strawweight champion who broke my heart last January, Zhang Weili or Weili Zhang. I don't really know which name we're using first, to be honest. Not a racist thing. I can never keep track on a day-to-day basis here. I don't know what
they keep, and that's what's weird about it too, because they always announce it back and forth. So I think it's Zhang Weili. I think that's how it is.
But then why is it written Weili Zhang? Like that is what I don't get.
I think they pronounce the last name first in China, right? Yeah. Isn't that how it goes? So it's Zhang Weili. I think I don't
like they used to have Ichiro's name on the back of his jersey, and I was like, oh, Ichiro's a stud. The guy puts his first name on the back of his jersey, but it turns out everybody does that. Anyway, I'd love if somebody could explain that to me. Anyway,
Ichiro's not Chinese though.
I'm going to go with how it's written on $10. It's true. We got Christ. We got Weili Zhang taking on Thug Rose Namajunas. We are going to start with Lags here because I believe you have a play.
I do. So this is the beginning of a 3-unit parlay that I have with Zhang Usman. So I have her locked up at minus 196, and the parlay closes out at plus 104. Yeah, I like her a lot. I played her against Joanna as well. I think she's a solid talent in this division. I think she's solid power, solid durability. And really, I think the only way that Rose can have extended success here is in the grappling. And I don't really rate that all too highly. I think that after, Zhang just gets used to Rose's, dynamic strength, obviously it's one of a kind. Don't get me wrong, but I think that she's going to slow later in the fight, and I think Zhang's prime for a knockout rounds 3, 4, 5, and I played a half unit as well on Zhang KO at plus 80.
Yeah, so I have no play here. I think the line is, I guess, more or less right. And so, look, I agree with most of what you said. I do think, there are major questions about Rose's gas tank. I also kind of think that people that are like Rose should grapple, don't realize that Rose isn't a very good wrestler. I do think there are some questions about Zhang's takedown.
I just think that's the only path for her. I just think that Zhang is going to just outlast her over 25.
So my concern, I shouldn't say it's weird. So my concern with Zhang is more like you look at when Rose is really gassed. It's been when girls will kind of bring the noise, but it's really become when girls have really forced the volume out of her. So like the Andrade fights, Andrade brings insane amount of volume. The JJ fight, JJ is going to come forward and bring an insane amount of volume. Now we saw Zhang's ability to bring that volume that JJ can. My question here is whether or not she'll bring it on her own. Because I think if she takes the fight to Rose, I think Rose is going to be pretty reliable to gas and is going to get finished late. The concern would be if it turns into a low tempo fight, in which case I think I'd still favor Zhang like somewhat significantly because I do think she is the harder striker, and I do sort of think she just has. Well, I don't sort of think she does have a more diverse skill set. She's like Rose is a boxer, and that's really it. She doesn't really have a lot else that she offers. Those knees up the middle were nice against the girl that's 5'1", but those aren't really going to be there against Zhang. And so Yeah, I mean, I favor Zhang wherever it goes. I just do think, if Zhang is content to keep it a more technical, low-tempo kickboxing match, it could be a closer fight down the stretch than we think. But I do, like I said, I think if she does the smart thing and just kind of brings the noise at Rose, she's going to finish her late here. I think the under is not bad, to be honest, because the bottom line is, I mean, both girls can hit hard. This isn't like the JJ fight where it's like, JJ you knew probably wasn't going to finish Zhang. Both girls have finishing upside. But yeah, I mean, I don't mind the poke at Zhang, and like you got a good number on it, Lags. I'm just like right passing at the current number. Luke, how about you?
Yeah, it's ironic because I've actually always been very anti-Zhang, as terrible as that sounds. I bet Joanna against her, I think at plus 165. I even added on at like plus 180 when that came up. Honestly, I still think that fight in terms of how you score, it's very questionable, if I'm being honest. I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me and say, it was clear-cut Zhang, her head was, Joanna's head was blown up or whatever, but Joanna did outland her by 20 significant strikes in the fight. I will say that, if you take some of the optics out of it, optics are a real thing in judging. I talk about it all the time. I get it. I'm not saying you can't score the fight for Zhang. You shouldn't, or it's wrong. I'm just saying to say that that fight was a clear-cut win for Weili, I think is irresponsible, personally. But with all that being said, I like Weili. I played her here. I think the Andrade fight was pretty illuminating, despite Rose, being able to play that stick and move type game. I get your point too, John, that, I do think Rose has a style to make rounds competitive here, but I think it's really down the stretch where that it's more so like a attritional based play for me, where I think it just gets to her over time, where I don't think she's going to be able to do that. And even in that Andrade fight, despite her looking good early, when her nose got busted, the big takeaway there for me was not that, her, game just went completely out the window per se, but her footwork stopped. She stopped throwing. Like, she just completely shut down in that fight as well. And so I think that's kind of what Weili is going to bring here. I don't think Rose can just dance around her for 25 minutes personally. I think Weili probably finds a KO. Not a super bullish take. Obviously, I have a play on it. I wouldn't recommend a play at the money line. Where I played it at minus 185 was like pretty much the fringe of where I would touch it. But yeah, I just think it's a fight where she wins it more often than not. I think it's a tough proposition for Rose to win minutes extended and win the optics.
Yeah, agreed. And just real quick, we try not to talk shit about fighters, just their fighting styles and how they fight. But fuck Rose, honestly. Fuck that little ignorant, brainwashed moron. That's it. I'm going to leave it there. Club and subs rooting for Zhang. I hope, Luke. You're on the commies. Right?
I hate communism, but yeah, let's go. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Before everybody brings up the boo birds, I'll calm down.
We are not endorsing communism. Just to be clear, folks, we are not going to be endorsing communism today.
But we are anti-American for this fight.
That's it. And we are not endorsing ignorance. Fuck Rose.
And Pat Barry.
Yeah, or Pat Barry and child molestation. So at
this point, John, I think you have to play the KO line.
I mean, I might play it, but yeah,
it's plus 260.
I might do it. We'll see. I mean,
John's going to do
it, but yeah. What are we endorsing getting kicked off YouTube? I'm not saying that we endorse any of that. I'm saying we do not endorse Pat Barry or his malicious practices towards underage girls.
And we do not endorse communism.
No, or communism.
I think we're a very politically correct podcast.
Yeah. Anyway, we move on. We got Kamaru Usman taking on Jorge Masvidal. Yeah, I have 2 units on Usman minus 400. It's nothing. I guess I'd ask, what's changed, really. I think he's about 85-90%. We've seen this fight. This is the rematch nobody asked for. I don't need to see it again. Maybe Masvidal can be a bit more competitive in the second round than he was last time. But at the end of the day, I am going to Florida on Friday, so I might have to steer. I have to be careful. But honestly,
Don't worry,
you're nowhere
don't
near
worry,
Milwaukee,
John,
so
I'll
you're
be there.
good, dude.
I'll be there. I'll kick his ass for you.
yeah, but anyway, I don't, I don't really see the angle on Masvidal here. Look, he could KO him. That's possible, but I don't think he hits harder than Burns. And Burns landed a fucking nuke like 3 times in that first round, and Usman still managed to just wear it. You know, he's just got super durability, and so it's like, look, you can never say never. Masvidal could obviously KO him. I just don't think it happens at a high clip. I actually think Usman's finishing upside is considerably higher. It's funny. I had a little argument with James from Lucrative MMA on this week because he was pointing out that he thought, you know, the round 1 prop should have been flipped, where it had Usman at plus 600 and Masvidal plus 1200. I don't really agree with that. Like, I don't give Masvidal more than like a 5% or so chance to knock Usman out in the first round. I actually think, you know, they have the same knockdown rates. Whatever you think about Usman striking, I'm not a huge fan of it. He does hit very, very hard. Plus, he's going to be the one finding dominant positions. I actually think the finishing upside's massively in his favor. And ultimately, it's just like, can you tell me how Masvidal wins a decision in this fight? Because I don't see how. And so
No.
I think he's like 10 to 15% that he could catch Usman. But like I said, his durability is so good. So it's like, look, it's not a big play, but I did sprinkle Usman here. I took the 2 units, minus 400 on the money line. I might add some on decision as well. Although, like I said, I think he has finishing upside late. And so it's like minus 160. I don't know. Luke, how about you?
Yeah, I'm kind of right there with you. I don't think the common narrative that has been given any sort of credence to Masvidal is the fact that he's had a full camp now, but it's like, who gives a shit? Because if you actually go back and watch him fight Damian Maia, what happened? If you go back and watch him fight Benson Henderson, what happened? You know, go back and watch the last fight with Usman. He gets controlled for 16 plus minutes in 50-45. Fun stat. We talk about, we've referenced it a few times before. The fact that when a guy at a championship level goes and fights, you know, next guy within a 12-year gap, or not a 12-month gap, with nobody in between, that guy wins the fight at a minimum 70% of the time. Now we're also talking about a guy who's probably the most dominant fighter in the UFC right now, who is almost impossible to win minutes on outside of a knockout. So I'd like to hear what the narrative of this full camp type deal brings, because from a stylistic perspective, it doesn't change shit at all. We just saw what happened. To your point, John, if he knocks him out, would I be shocked? Kind of. Like, I'm not saying it's not impossible. Obviously,
I mean, yeah, I think at this point I'd be shocked. Just after the Burns fight, just kind of what we've seen, I wouldn't be shocked.
It's just so low percentage, though. Like, I don't know how you could bet it that way. So, in my opinion, if you're betting it, I'm not trying to be a mark and say because he went, you know, and won 50-45 decision, you know, bet Usman decision, but homeboy's, you know, 80% on the money line, and his decision line's like 55% right now. I'm just saying, I think if you are to play the fight, I think that's the way to play it. If you have access to 4 or 5 decision to cover a few more bases, I'd say take that too. But once again, similar to a couple of the other fights I've talked about earlier tonight, and most notably Hall, it comes down to what do you assess that KO line at? Because if you can't make a rational argument to say that KO line meets, you know, close to the money line or even exceeds that for you to make value, well, then why are you making a case for Masvidal? Because it doesn't make any sense. I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm done. Usman decision.
Legs, how about you?
I agree too. Usman closes out my parlay with Wally. I got him at minus 285 when FanDuel opened him there. Closes out at plus 104. This is pretty much a rerun of the first fight. I don't see how anybody could really think differently. I've been talking to a bunch of people at work, and they're, you know, all Hispanic living in South Florida. They're like, oh yeah, that's what I was going to beat him this time. I'm literally like, they're a bunch of casual fans too. I'm like, did you guys watch the first fight? Like, I don't think he has any chance at all. And they're like, oh no, I don't know, full camp this time. I was like, showing them videos of him eating cheeseburgers and stuff leading up to this camp. So no, To be honest, Usman should roll with this, and similar to you, John, I would be very shocked to see him get knocked out here.
Yeah, I just think Masvidal's fucked, to be honest. It's like I never lay minus 400 lines, and it's just like I looked at it and I'm like, how is it not like you're telling me Corey wins this 1 in 5 times? I really don't think so.
Well, real quick, did any of you guys hit that FanDuel Masvidal open at minus 285?
You mean Usman? I did not get
Or
on.
yeah, Usman. I'm sorry. You hit it, Legs.
That's my minus 285, and then I have Zhang at minus 196. So the parlay is plus 104.
Okay, I just put a K on that at minus 285.
Oh, nice. All right, listen,
I went straight to the casino. I'm like, boom.
That's fair. I should have done it, to be honest. I don't know why I didn't. I was just like, yeah, I'll get around to it. I have more bets that I want to make in the upcoming weeks. I don't want to have the money in there too long. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I still don't really mind having money on it at minus 400. I'm pretty.
To be honest, like in a few weeks, that's kind of how I feel with like Leon Edwards.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Pretty much. Pretty much. But yeah, boys, thanks for coming out tonight, everybody. That was a fun show. Please, no one tell Pat Barry about, the last couple minutes. I'm just kidding. I don't give a fuck.
Fuck Pat Barry.
Good. Now Lag is putting the target on his back. That's what we need.
I'm impartial. I love Pat Barry. Not really.
But yeah, Luke's a little closer to the situation out in Wisconsin.
I'm in Wisconsin.
But yeah, thanks for stopping by tonight. Thanks for stopping by, guys, tonight. It was a fun show. Had a great time. We'll be back next week. I actually think next week's card is going. The next 2 weeks' cards look great for betting, so that's going to be a lot of fun. Yeah. So as usual, guys, please, if you like the show, drop a like and subscribe. We do it every week. We're going to keep doing it every week, even if you don't. But we sure as fuck would appreciate it if you do. So thanks for coming out. As usual, I'm John at MMA Fox, Luke at SWR_betting, and Lags at Lags_the Capper. We'll see you at 10 o'clock next Wednesday.
And last thing, I will probably have a Lambo parlay because I will be going to UFC261. So I'll give one out for the people.
You can look out. Lags is going to drop a Lambo parlay. Maybe you'll get a Lambo parlay article. We'll see, guys. I'm going to actually post written write-ups this fight and get back on the horse here. But yeah, guys, thanks for coming out. We appreciate it. We'll see you guys next week.
Peace.